Crispian. Please be seated. Good evening, everybody. And the meeting will be live streamed to the web, and ELT, DEM services and councillors and possibly even the media are welcome to stay for a soft drink or a glass of wine afterwards. So we do have apologies from Councillor Foster. He's in hearings, though I think he may be able to, that may have finished, but it's certainly for lateness. And I've got a couple of announcements to make, one of which is just to place on the record. So do I need to have them apologies moved and seconded?
You should have them.
Well, given Andy's here, I might just withdraw moving the apologies for Councillor Foster and welcome you here. I just want to place on record that the Wellington branch of the New Zealand Planning Institute awarded the Giok Ling Fang Memorial Award to the Wellington City Council for the Wellington Urban Growth Plan, so well done. And it's given to projects or publications which progress the planning profession and highlight the valuable contribution sound planning makes to the quality of where we live, work and play. I'd also like to acknowledge the work that's been done in recent weeks, opening Eva Leeds and Mason's Lane, which are, if you like, the practical end of the urban planning that is done. So well done, everyone. I'd now like to move to, I suppose I should wish you all happy Christmas in the announcements. And I have one very important announcement to make. For Christmas Day, Councillor Marsh will be Mayor Marsh for Christmas Day. And maybe we will set a precedent for other Christmas days in the future. So we could give Mayor Marsh for Christmas Day a little round of applause. There we are. I promised. I carried out my promise. Moving forward, conflict of interest declarations. Does anyone have any conflict they wish to declare? Right, we'll move on to confirmation of the minutes. Crispian swiftly circulated the minutes of the ordinary and extraordinary council meetings, 28th of October and the 8th of December. I move those as an accurate record of the meeting. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ahopini Mercer. Please say aye. Those in favour? Aye. Anyone against? I declare the motion carried. And I'd now like to move to public participation. And Alan Probert and Lucas Putnam from La Boca Loca and Andrew Hawkes from Park Kitchen regarding the business investment district and the food truck issue in Miramar. So together you have up to 10 minutes. Thank you.
Your Worship, the Mayor, Councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak briefly to an issue that is a little unusual, but which the bid is finding of concern in Miramar. For those of you who may not be aware, we have an inundation of food trucks in Miramar, and they're not bid members. It's not covered under the bid policy. Our role, as you know, is to advocate for our members, and so I've asked 3 of our members in the hospitality field to come along and just give you a snapshot of the situation as they see it.
G'day, I'm Lucas Putnam of La Boca Loca. Thank you very much for having us here today. So insofar as we can see, it has had a direct effect on our business, especially our lunchtime trade, which is in that area somewhat limited by the population, which is somewhat smaller than the CBD. I personally have no problem with food trucks. I love food trucks, and I've seen it be a part of a vibrant city scene, if you were, throughout the world. Just not quite sure from what we've seen if they're all kind of operating within the letter of the law, and it's it makes it hard for us who have put a lot of effort and time and money into the spaces that we provide and the regular business that we provide. So that's kind of hard for us, and we're just not really sure how to go about doing anything about it. We can't go to them directly, though we would like to open a dialogue if possible, so that everybody can kind of coexist in that kind of scene out there. Yeah. This is Jacob, by the way.
Hi, I'm Jacob from the Larder restaurant. Food trucks, great, but out in Miramar, there's only a certain population there, and they have the ability to go straight to the source. We're established businesses. We provide a community service. We're there from 5 o'clock in the morning through till 12 o'clock at night. So we're always there all the time, and these food trucks seem to be able to come in between our businesses and the source of our customers and park wherever they wish, right next to it. I don't have any sort of rules or laws about where they're allowed to park and where they're not allowed to park. And they kind of just come in and get in between us and our customers. So for example, on a Saturday morning, there might be a book signing, which is 100 metres down the road from us at Weta Workshop. They will park their coffee cart right next to Weta Workshop. That'll reduce my business by about 30-40%. We have to pay rent, we have to provide toilet facilities as well, and they seem to be establishing themselves more than just being food trucks, which are temporary, where they kind of come and go and do festivals or one day a week, where they're actually renting sites permanently and then putting out chairs and tables around their food trucks as well. And to me, that's not like a temporary food truck. That's like a permanent structure in the same place there every day. And it just doesn't quite seem fair for us when we're providing community service. They're just coming in and it feels like they're sort of, I don't want all the businesses out there to cannibalize each other. There's only a certain amount of customers out there, and they're not bringing in any more customers. If it was a sort of a dedicated area that was bringing more people out to the area, that would be fantastic. But that's not really happening. They're just coming and sort of feels like they're poaching the other customers. Andrew.
Yeah, hi there, I'm Andrew Hawkes from Park Kitchen. As well as being another restaurateur, also property owner in the area. So there's us, and we also have our tenant next door, fish and chip shop. Now with resource consent, there's all kinds of restrictions and hoops we had to jump through and rules we have to abide by, which we've seen these food trucks don't have to. For example, they park on a lot just up the road. They can have as many chairs and tables outside as they like, and they can put a stereo out there. There seems to be like no restrictions. And for example, our tenant, the fish and chip shop next door to us, he can't actually have anybody in there dining because he can't provide enough toilet facilities for his customers. So he's being adversely affected by this as well. And there's a number of us, we're there, as the guys have said, make a commitment to the area. We employ a lot of people, and jobs are at risk, and not just our livelihoods, but livelihoods of all our employees.
So I guess, just to give you an idea, we have 6 or 7 food trucks. There are others rumoured to be on the way. And so, as I said, we think it's an issue that needs to be addressed by council. What are the rules around this? What's fair? What's a level playing field? And it's tough on our businesses. And we appreciate the chance of letting you know today.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming in. I've got a couple of questions from people. We've got 5 minutes left for questions. Just wanted to say that we will need any changes to any rules will not happen overnight in any way. Obviously, we need to consult with food trucks and places like the Night Market, Lower Cuba Street, absolutely awesome. So we've just got to work through this in a fair way, but I really appreciate we're all busy before Christmas, you taking the time to come in and talk to us. So I've got a number of people who've got questions for you. Councillor Lester, Councillor Peck, Councillor Ahupini Mercer. We'll be doing well if we get through those questions and answers.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming in. We actually had a conversation, a question. Stand up. Yes. We had a conversation at a Transport and Urban Development Committee last week on this very issue around the impacts of mobile businesses on existing retailers, so it's quite timely for you to come in, and we've got a number of councillors around the table who have experience in running retail businesses as well and provide some of their own insights. Do you think it's more appropriate and fairer, given the nature of food trucks and they are popular, that they're prioritised around events and one-offs rather than direct competing, because they don't have those overheads, they don't have the restrictions, and they're basically competing with your market share.
Yes, 100%. That feels what they.
Sorry, would you be kind enough to come near the microphone?
Sorry.
It's not great in here.
Yeah, I mean, I personally feel that that's actually what food trucks are about. That's where they fit in really well, and that's where they service the community. And so when they do special events, weddings, that kind of scenario.
Yeah, and also one of the things that I've read up about, I went and read about food trucks for some reason. So in other cities they started to kind of encourage food trucks to service areas that don't have the services already. Like, we have a pretty vibrant food scene out in Miramar, and there's a lot of businesses that have put a lot of effort and time, and we've put all our everything into it, really, So that's kind of, it's already existing, so it seems a bit strange to have, and there are areas that need more, services in that respect. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Yes.
Thank you.
One more question.
Well, I'm sorry, there's two more councillors who want to ask a question, so I'm sure through Alan, if you don't already have their contacts directly, we can continue and we'll work out how we engage. So, Councillor Peck.
Kia ora, and thank you for the presentation. I also have a little food business, so I understand this issue. And I know I've got to ask a question, but I come out and enjoy your fair because you all do really good food. Larder and polo and la baka laka, just good stuff. So my question to you is two things. First of all, can you let us know what your compliance obligations to council are? And secondly, how can we level the playing field so that you can compete with these guys in a way that your businesses don't need to suffer?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the rub, right? I guess.
Yeah.
Do you want to jump in?
Well, I'd say it's more about the compliance for them. I mean, at the moment we're happy with the hoops we jump through and the compliance. I think it's all quite reasonable. The issue is that those same rules don't seem to apply to these food trucks. So if that level playing field could be levelled, so they have to follow the same rules that we do, that would make our life a lot easier.
And I'm sorry, and obviously it may not be viable for them. There's the reason that it is a business, right? But something closer to what we're being asked to do. If you need the specifics, then we can talk about that. Yeah.
Right. Sorry, Councillor Ahapini Mercer.
Thank you. That's okay. My question is more to Alan. Alan, have you had direct contact with any officers and or any legal advice on this independent of council?
Well, firstly, I'd like to say that both Councillor Marsh and Phil have been very helpful. I mean, at the end of the day, what we've got to do is find out the rules as they stand.
Okay, that answers my question, because you need to know the compliance aspects of it. So we will come back to you on that. And if you had any independent legal advice of a legal nature,
We're still in information gathering at the moment.
we will come back to you on it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for alerting us at this stage. So thank you for the work that people are doing on this already. And the Chief Executive has assured me that some officers are already looking into it, and it's one of those areas between a couple of different areas. So we will get back to you, but it won't probably be before Christmas. So have a wonderful Christmas, and we have to make sure we come out and celebrate in the East as well.
Thank you, guys.
So the first report, going to general business, is a very minor amendment to terms of reference and delegations. And I think it should have been Justin, not me. Because it's terms and reference and delegations, Councillor Lester, governance being your area, I think it should have probably been yourself that introduces this report. Would you be happy to... In this case, I will move that city resilience is included in the terms of reference for the GFP committee, and that city resilience is an item in my portfolio. Are you happy to second?
Happy to second.
Is that Anyone else wish to speak? Right, well, we will, it's moved and seconded. Please vote. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Anyone against? So that's been carried. So, Councillor Coghlan, you have the submission on the Shop Trading Hours Amendment Bill, which can't go to Economy and Arts because of the timing. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Young, do you wish to speak? Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. When I read this, I looked through and, I mean, it makes sense. However, one word in there, I thought it's perhaps a little bit inflammatory when you say allowing workers to refuse to work without having to provide a reason to their employer. I mean, I would have used the word decline, because, you know, if somebody says, I refuse to do it, then the other party gets a little bit, and if you say, look, I just would rather decline to work, it's perhaps less inflammatory way of going about it. That's all I'm suggesting.
I think that might be within the delegation to be able to make that minor amendment between Councillor Coghlan and the Chief Executive.
Thank you.
Councillor Pannett?
Your Worship, well, look, I thought about it 50-50 whether I'd vote it or not. I'm actually going to vote against it. And I think this paper, unfortunately, doesn't really cover the issue. First of all, there's no justification given for why we need different bylaws all over the country. We're a country of 4 million people. It doesn't matter, you know, whether you're in Queenstown or Auckland or Wellington, the issues are the same on public holidays. So while it does say that there's a preference for a nationally consistent approach, it does also say that we support this approach, and I don't think we do. I think it is out of date. Many people, of course, are not practicing Christians and will not see the Easter holidays as being of significance, although, of course, it's recognised that it is important to some people. You know, we live in a very diverse culture now. But my issue is that we actually need to have a break from ceaseless consumption. There is actually no need to shop 365 days. Now, of course, if you do have a preference, you can go on the internet. But there actually needs to be some time for families and friends to stay together, and rather than just buying stuff. And I do not think that the analysis around the refusal or the being able to decline to work is adequate. Retail workers are often very vulnerable. They're on low wages. You know, that doesn't actually give them much freedom if the law essentially, because this is it's just another step basically to have 365 days a year of shopping. And I think this emphasis on constant consumption is actually not necessary. There is no right enshrined in the Bill of Rights to go shopping. And I think this really just does take it a little bit too far. And in fact, I do disagree with Local Government New Zealand on that point. And it does potentially, we do need to make sure that there is some assessment about how it is consistent with the Bill of Rights, given it does have the potential to impinge on people's rights to practice their religion for those who choose to. But look, enough. Shops should stay closed. It's not many days of the year where they are. There may be other days where people of other faiths may want to make a case for they should be closed too. I'm personally happy to look at that. But it's got to stop. People need to be protected, particularly those who are vulnerable and working in the retail sector.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, my biggest concern about this is the potential that we end up with 67 different councils, which have to go through quite an exercise, and I think we should understand that this will be quite an exercise. If we decide, yes, we're in, or no, we're not in, there are going to be lots of people who are going to take an interest in it for one reason or another. And I just don't see this as being particularly deeply strategic for us, and so I see it very much as a diversion. Why is it a diversion? Because the government, yet again, has ducked one of these sort of, if you like, moral type issues, because in some ways it does come down to being a moral type issue, as maybe it's a belief issue, and the government yet again has said, here's a hospital pass, councils, and it was going to waste an awful lot of time. You're all going to have to go and consult on it, because inevitably we will all have to, and so it'll waste not only our time but the community's time, and that's money and resource doesn't go to something else. So that's what I think we should be saying, and I think that we believe a consistent nationwide approach would be preferable. I think that's the bit that needs to be stronger. And I think the government, or Parliament, not the government, but Parliament, should be saying, right, yes, it's in or it's not in. And when you think about that, the arbitrariness of what is being proposed here is pretty glaring as well, because Good Friday, I think, is still a no-go day, isn't it? So Good Friday, no-go. Easter Sunday, maybe go. Yeah, maybe you can, maybe you can't. I mean, what's the logic? What's the common sense? What's the consistency behind those sort of things? So, if we're aspiring to the Christian perspective, you probably say both of them are in. But if we're not, you say both of them are out. So where again is the logic and the common sense sitting behind that? So I think we should be saying this is a consistent nationwide approach, not just to Easter Sunday, but to Good Friday as well. Probably to all of these holidays will be a sensible thing. But the government doesn't, or the Parliament just doesn't seem to want to go there. The other thing to say is just, the issue around some specific areas. Now, usually that's been about areas where there are, they're particularly in the tourist areas and holiday type areas. But when you look at Easter, that's not usually the peak of the peak in terms of our holiday areas. And if it is a holiday time, which often it is in terms of school holidays, it's equally holiday time from North Cape to the Bluff. And I'm not sure that means it's anywhere which is distinctly different in terms of it's not the middle of summer. It's not the ski period for the Queenstowns of the world. So I'm not quite sure why we would not want, again, that more consistent approach. So, yeah, my view is just we're a little stronger on the consistent nationwide approach. In other words, we don't want the hospital pass, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. We had Councillor Ritchie next.
Madam Mayor, Councillors, I don't support this submission, although I wasn't going to make a song and dance about it, but actually it does have some implications, and I'm going to tell you why, and they're a little bit different from what has been said, and some I agree with. First of all, I do think that there should be a blanket for the whole country, but I tend to feel that the shops should be closed on that day, and I'll tell you why. I don't think this is an issue about endless consumption. Nobody is forcing anybody else to compulsorily shop. So you can choose not to compulsorily do endless consumption if you wish. That's not the issue, but the issue for workers is a significant issue. The right to refuse to work for people who are perhaps earning $14 an hour, or maybe 18 if they have a kind employer, is not really a right. It is very difficult for an employee to stand up to an employer and say, I don't want to work today for whatever reason. But it's also, and I'm going to speak from a personal point of view, you will know that in schools religious instruction is not compulsory. It's a very similar situation. When I was a child, we were allowed, a very small group of us, because we were a very small minority, we were allowed to leave. We could refuse religious instruction, but we didn't want to be identified as different. And that's a very similar analogy to what we have here. We didn't want to stand up to the authority of the teacher or the employer or whomever, and it was a very difficult choice for us. So I don't think this is appropriate at all. But also, I think that this country should celebrate a few days when we can actually holiday and enjoy our holidays as a country. Closed, quiet. There are only about 3 in many countries, and I can think of one in particular. There is a day a week where there is no traffic, no shops open. It is quiet, people walk, people enjoy, people do whatever it is that they want to do. So generally I don't support this. As I say, I'm not going to make a song and dance about it, but I don't think we should support the submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pack.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. A bit like Councillor Ritchie, I don't want to make a song and dance about it either, but I do have considerable sympathy with the views expressed by Councillor Foster. And in my last stint in Parliament, I actually moved a private member's bill to deal with this particular issue, and it got on the ballot, it got pulled, and it was debated in Parliament, and it was defeated by 2 votes. And I notice in the information we have in front of us, there have been 2 more attempts to deal with it through the Parliament, and they've been defeated as well. So the difficulty we have is that it's not a matter which the legislature want to actually sort out, and it is a huge anomaly. And despite what councillors may think, there's no equity in Queenstown being allowed to open and Wanaka not being allowed to open. And there's no equity in Rotorua being allowed to open and Taupo not being allowed to open. These are the inconsistencies that currently exist in the law now. And it's fodder for those that want to go around and take prosecutions against, and we've just had some retailers in here telling us how hard it is to trade, going out and taking prosecutions against businesses who really have no option in those areas but to open, because otherwise they miss out on market share when the market share's there. And let's not forget that in a lot of these areas, that market share is seasonal. And so, you know, when customers are around, they've got to take it. But I don't believe that as local authorities we should take on the responsibility to do for Parliament what Parliament won't do for itself. It's Parliament's job to sort this out. Otherwise we're likely to end up with what we saw under the old Shop Trading Hours Act, heaps of inspectors around the place to go out and check who's been open, who's not been open and why, and whether you're within the MAP district or you're not within the MAP district. It is frankly, Madam Mayor, going to be quite a muddle, and we don't need to buy into it. I think we should... sorry? I'm suggesting that what we do is we vote against the report, because I just do not believe, Madam Mayor, that there's any point in making a submission to this bill which would take away Parliament's responsibility to actually need to sort the matter out.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Young and then Councillor Lester.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we really do need a consistent nationwide approach. It would be simpler, clearer for everyone to understand. We have this crazy situation of a mishmash of rules, and this is just going to encourage more of a mishmash. So you have people in Wellington will be able to go to certain areas to shop or not, and then we have that crazy system that certain shops are allowed to open, others aren't, but they may be selling very similar products. People can already shop 24 hours a day on the internet. That's really totally irrelevant to this. But the thing is, I think we should have one consistent rule across New Zealand. I'm perfectly happy for the shops to say closed on Easter Sunday, but I'm not a retailer and I don't earn my living from retailing. So that's really not something that I think I want to have a strong view on. All I want is consistency, which is clearer to administer.
So Lester may wish to move an amendment.
Madam Mayor, I simply wish to point out the fact, and then I may at the end request an adjournment to allow us time to consider an appropriate amendment rather than doing it on the hoof. The point that I want to make, and I agree with some of the sentiments made, but then I have a slightly different point of view on others. But with the sentiment, of course, that this is, again, once more passing the buck from a difficult parliamentary decision where they want to make a change but don't have the... Not the guts, they don't have the political support necessarily, nor the community support to enact it, so are delegating the responsibility to local government. Unfortunately, this is now not the first instance of this, but a series, and it's not entirely appreciated. However, if we don't submit on this, councillors, we are left with nothing. So we have to submit, because otherwise we're not part of the process, and the process will continue without us. So we absolutely need to submit. It's a question more of what we say. We also have to remember that currently there is a mishmash of laws, so, and I understand Queensland and Rotorua, you can trade, should you so desire, but in other cities or other territorial authorities they can't. Wanaka would like to, I understand. Wellington may also decide ultimately that it wants to. We don't have that flexibility currently. There's also a situation where some retailers can currently trade. Food retailers, for example, are available to trade as under the current legislation. Other retailers cannot. So in some respects in Wellington, many of the retailers are already open. And also then the opportunity, also there's a potential cost because the cost of doing so often, given the 2.5 times wage costs on a public holiday, often it's not actually profitable for the retailer to open. So these need to be factored into account on a like-for-like basis depending on the nature of the business. However, I think we should be supporting some form of submission because not to do so means we have no say. And this is only the first or one of the first steps in the process, and ultimately we'll come back to our council for a decision about how we want to proceed, and we can determine what that policy looks like, but to say nothing at this stage is not terribly sensible. If I could call for an adjournment for a period of 3 minutes if we want to. Well, because we may wish to have an amendment, Councillor Coughlin, through you, the Chair.
So, councillors, what I suggest, I will move an amendment, but I will take a minute's adjournment, just because I'm just taking the temperature of the room, and I think what I'm likely to say, but I'm just going to take the adjournment so that we can fine-tune it, is amend the submission to strengthen Council's preference for a consistent nationwide approach. Oh, is that all right as it is? Okay, then I guess I've moved it. So, amend the submission to strengthen Council's preference for a consistent nationwide approach. We haven't said which way we want that preference to be. So do I have somebody who hasn't spoken who's happened to second that? Councillor Eagle, thank you. You have spoken because you've introduced it, Councillor Coughlin. So let's just get those words up. So who else wishes to, what I will then do is test whether the meeting is willing to accept that amendment, but it's probably best if you see it first. So Councillor, just hang on. That's right. They will be consulting more widely than just us. Has it got something else? Yeah, that's fine. That's perfect. Okay. Please look at your screens and see. Councillor Eagle, you're still happy to second that? Okay, I'm going to test whether the meeting is happy to accept the amendment. You're not happy to accept the amendment? Sorry, Councillor. So you're not accepting it. Perhaps nobody wishes. Does anyone wish to speak to the amendment? Okay, Councillor.
Sorry, I think we've got ourselves into a bit of a muddle here because really the analysis hasn't been done in the initial work, so that doesn't help. But look, the reason I've got concerns about the amendment is that it actually doesn't say anything and doesn't give enough guidance to the people who will be representing us on this. The other thing is, and I'm sorry, looking at members of the Labour Party, I'm surprised that there hasn't been more support for some of the more substantial concerns that this will raise at a national level. So I probably am still going to vote against it, and I'm disappointed that we haven't had a more substantial debate. It isn't just about national consistency.
So, Councillor, I think this is a question of the timing. Does anyone else wish to speak to the amendment? Do they really wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Ritchie.
I do think there is a problem. I can just see us going to the Select Committee and the question will be, well, what is your approach? Well, it's a consistent one. Is that good? That's not very good for a capital city. No, I haven't finished.
Oh.
Sorry. I do think that there should be an adjournment. While there was consistency around the table about a consistent approach, there were other approaches accepted, and I wonder whether we shouldn't have a position to take to the select committee or to wherever it's going to go.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Of course, it was anyone's opportunity to suggest some things in the days since we have received this in plenty of time for that to be taken. Councillor Foster.
Yeah, look, I think this one is a perfectly reasonable thing for us to go and talk to the government about, or to Parliament about, because basically what we're saying is you have one rule, whatever that rule is, North Cape to the Bluff. And that seems to me to be the key principle, because what we don't want to have is a situation where we have one arrangement in Wellington and one arrangement in Porirua and one arrangement in the Hutt Valley, which is a complete mishmash. And we also don't want the situation where every single local authority has to go through this process, and we will, every single one of them will have to go through this process and take up all that time and effort and resource. Now, what the answer is, whether the answer is that Easter is a no trading day, or with some limitations or whatever, or is a trading day, that's fine. But the legislation at the moment is about how do we pass the buck? How does Parliament pass the buck to councils? What we're actually saying here is, what we want the legislation to say is, Parliament's going to make the decision. Parliament then seeks the feedback from the wider New Zealand community on what the rules should be, and then Parliament enacts that decision. Now, if they haven't got the intestinal fortitude to make that decision and want to leave it as it is, so be it. And that sounds as though that's been the case in the past, but they should not be passing that on to 67 or 66 local authorities around the country and saying, we couldn't make the decision, therefore you have to go through this process and make the decision for you. That is farcical.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Coghlan on the amendment.
Well, I mean, that's fine, and that's why we're going to strengthen the amendment to make it very, very clear that we think that a consistent approach across the country is the way to go. Ultimately, we're actually not the decision makers, but we are having our say through the submission process. I mean, I think if people want to look at actually appearing before the committee, then perhaps that's something that we should be doing as well. But, I mean, as was pointed out to me earlier, we can actually just reverse the sentences in paragraph 10, where we talk about the nationwide approach secondary to the supporting the position of enabling TAs to determine whether shop trading is allowed in their district. So we'll just flip that around, say that we support a nationwide approach and then a local approach, and that actually effectively is what the amendment is seeking to achieve.
Thank you, Councillor Lester.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do want to again stress, Councillor Foster, that this buck passing essentially, we've seen it now for psychoactive substances, online voting, local alcohol policy, a fluoridation of water, a refusal to even consider the issue. I've missed one. There are more. But I do want to point out, and it's a sound of warning, the national approach, why there is a potential pitfall. I'll support the amendment as it currently stands on that basis, but there is a pitfall. If you go the other way, then all of a sudden Queenstown and Rotorua are excluded of something they already have. Wanaka wants to be excluded, Wellington may not. What should take place, the decision should be made at Parliament, it should be made with the legislature. It should include those territorial authorities that submit then and further down the line to Parliament saying we would like to be included or excluded, and they should make the decision, enshrine it in legislation. What we don't want is an all or nothing necessarily approach for those that want to be included against those that don't. Ultimately, that should be their decision, but Parliament should make it.
Thank you, councillors. I think, councillor, let's vote on the amendment first. Please, those in favour of the amendment as written there, agree to amend the attached submission on the Shop Trading Hours Amendment Bill to strengthen council's preference for a consistent nationwide approach. Those in favour? Aye. Do you want to? Do you need to take a division?
We should take a division.
Okay, we should take it. Okay, council, we should. So, I missed that board, I have to say. Please raise your hands if you're in favour. I think. Look, we might be easier to just take the noes. Okay, so those against, Councillor Pannett and everyone else is present and in favour. So that, I declare that passed. We will now take the 1, 2, 4 as they stand. Those in favour, please raise your hand. As amended. And those against? So, again, I think that's... So Councillor Panic vote against, declare it carried. We now move to the next item, which is councillor appointments to Te Whare Waka o Pōneke. This is number 2.3. On page 3, it was erroneously down as me to introduce. As it's a governance portfolio, it's for Councillor Lester to introduce.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to introduce this report. In the past, or as a set law to the Te Whare Waka o Pōneke Trust, Council has had 2 appointments. Traditionally, in the past, have been 2 officers. Stavros Michael and Wendy Walker fulfilled the roles. There are currently 2 vacancies. We're proposing to appoint 2 individuals, 1 councillor and 1 independent external trustee. I understand the external will be appointed and public excluded. We have got 1 expression of interest from a councillor to be appointed to the role. We've had discussions with existing trustees and with iwi, and they are supportive of that nomination, which will occur following the conclusion of the recommendations that we appoint to. Thank you.
So first we will move... Does anyone wish to speak to the report? Do we have a seconder for 1? First of all, 1 and 2, Councillor Foster. Do you wish to speak to 1 and 2? No. So what we will do is we'll vote on 1 and 2, and if they go through, we will then call for nominations. So all those in favour of receive the information and agree to appoint a councillor, please raise your hand. Looks unanimous to me. I declare that carried. And number 3, I'd like to call for nominations. Councillor Lester.
Happy to nominate Councillor Eagle.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Marsh. Do we have any other nominations? There being no other nominations, please may we vote on number 3, agree to appoint Councillor Eagle to the board of Te Whare Waka o Pōneke. Please raise your hands if you're in favour. Are you avoiding voting or are you in favour? Well, it's up to you. Okay. So that's unanimous, I think.
Yes, it is.
So. Congratulations. It did include the responsibility of paddling, I'm sure. So moving on, Councillor Eagle, it's your moment in the limelight. You are introducing the report on the fire bylaw review. Councillor, go with Tudd first. No, so I would like to ask you to vote on Part 7 Consolidated Bylaw. Those in favour, please raise your hand if you're in favour. That looks unanimous to me. Anyone against? It was unanimous. Paul, Councillor Eagle, over to you with the Community Sport and Recreation meeting. Apologies for calling it first.
That's fine, Madam Mayor. Look, just a few minor amendments to the fire bylaw, makes things a lot clearer for the public, and we're consistent with the region. I move.
A seconder, Councillor Foster. Do you wish to speak? Does anyone wish to light a fire under this particular report? Okay, then those in favour, please vote. Please raise your hand. and I declare that carried unanimously. Must be heading towards Christmas or something. And we now move to the public decision to go into public excluded or not. And the reasons are, this is for appointments and for them to be able to be considered in public excluded, and adding in permit Rachel Taylor and Kerry Anderson from DLA Piper to remain at the meeting because of their knowledge of matters under discussion. So I put the public excluded vote. Please raise your hands if you're in favour. Oh, seconder, sorry, Councillor Free, you happy to second? Thank you. Anyone against? Declared passed unanimously. Keep an eye on Michael Forbes and the wine out there. So we're going to draw the curtains, and now this should be Justin again. Because it's appointments, I think it's you. Sorry. Happy Christmas, everybody.